What's going on, ladies and gentlefish? This is Paulie from Paulie Picks. This is my very first video on this channel, and I'm really excited to start this channel because I love combat sports, and we'll be covering MMA, we'll be covering boxing, we'll be covering influencer fights. We'll basically be covering anything that has anything to do with combat sports, and I'm gonna be bringing as much content as you guys to possible as much as possible and yeah, that should be a couple times a week, so make sure you subscribe because that's what I'm here for. I need the subscribers so I can keep doing this as much as possible. But for today, for starters, we're going to be talking about the UFC 285 main event that I'm super pumped for. Can't wait. As you can see, one of the guys right behind me, Jon Jones, arguably the greatest fighter of all time, is stepping up in weight after 3 long years since we last saw him, and he's going to be taking on Ciryl Gane, the most complex striker in possibly heavyweight history in mixed martial arts. The guy is a riddle, and only one man has been able to solve him so far, and that was the undisputed champion Francis Ngannou until he wound up leaving the UFC for like a contract dispute. But I'm gonna be breaking down this fight. I had just watched a couple of their recent fights in its totality the other day. I watched every John fight from 2018 through to 2020, and I was looking at Ciryl's last 3 or 4 fights. And I'm going to basically be breaking this thing down, telling you guys who I think is going to win at the end of the video, because after all, the channel's called Paulie Picks for a reason. We're going to be picking these fights. So let's get into it. So Jon Jones waited 3 long years since his last fight to actually step up in weight and go for the belt. Now, I know a lot of people are disappointed that they can't see him fight Francis Ngannou, but honestly, it might have been a blessing in disguise because this Ciryl Gane fight is a real treat. I was nervous for a while that they were going to give the fight to Stipe Miocic, and that's not really a fight that I was very interested in. I would like to see Jon fight one of the new, hungry young guys who are just showing an absolutely different skill set than we're used to seeing at heavyweight, and Ciryl is one of those guys, so it's going to be a great fight. Um, Jon coming up is also basically a legacy move. He needs to add to his legacy to truly cement himself, because we got so many guys today that can do so much and that are threats to get 2 titles, 3 titles, maybe even 4 titles, depending on what style they have and how good they are. So Jon, if he really wants to stay that top guy, then he's gonna have to make some moves here, and that's exactly what he's doing. I don't find it as impressive to move up after 3 years off getting prepared for it as it is to move up right away, like we just saw Alexander Volkanovski do. He won that fight, by the way. And like we saw Daniel Cormier do at these same weight classes that we're going to be discussing. But nonetheless, it's very, very impressive if he's able to get this done, and especially against Ciryl Gane, a guy that is just mesmerizing, especially for having the amount of fights that he has. He's barely had any fights. It reminds me of Chris Weidman back in the day. I think he was either 9-0 or 10-0 at the time of fighting Anderson, and that's basically what Ciryl was. I think Ciryl might have had double-digit wins if I'm not wrong, or I'm sorry, single-digit wins if I'm not wrong, when he went to fight Francis. So, which I don't think that he would have lost that fight had he game planned at all for Francis to wrestle. Francis really never has wrestled ever. I mean, I know he had that one Kimura, but he's not a wrestler. Like, he doesn't impose his will in the grappling ever. But he did in that fight, and it surprised Gane, and more power to Francis. But I think in a rematch, I might even lean towards Gane. So now let's get into breaking this fight down. First thing I would like to say is that I think that Gane is absolutely the better striker. I know Jon Jones is known for his diversity, but Ciryl Gane's at a whole nother level. The way this guy uses his footwork, switches his stances, is so fluid. It's amazing. It's like nothing Jon Jones has ever seen before. And we already know that Jon Jones has a problem with guys that are as tall as him, as long as him, and Ciryl Gane's going to be as strong as him and maybe stronger than him too. Ciryl Gane's the way he can fight from southpaw or orthodox, the way he can mix it in both. And we saw Jon Jones struggle with Dominic Reyes' footwork in his last fight. To be honest with you, Dominic Reyes was able to use footwork to get out of certain situations and then land shots, and he had Jon walking on the shots too. So if Dom Reyes can use his footwork to his advantage against Jon, I think a way more sophisticated, way more diverse striker in Ciryl Gane would be able to do the same thing. Um, Both guys are great kickers. They both use their legs very well. Jon Jones in his recent years hasn't been as much of a great kicker. He does use the knee stomps a lot, and that could pose a problem for literally anybody. One good knee stomp and you're done. You have nothing left in your leg. So that could be an issue, but I think Gane's teep kicks, his front kicks, his kicks to the body, his kicks to the head, he mixes it up so well. He's bouncing, so you don't know when they're going to come, when the punches are going to come, when the kicks are going to come. I think I have to give him the advantage in overall striking, period. Um, I think, though, that a problem with Gane's kicks could be that Jon Jones could most definitely wound up timing that front kick to the body and getting a hold of that single leg and taking Gane for a ride. And that would be horrible for Gane because in the Francis fight, I think the thing that mainly cost Gane the fight was the fact that he made a lot of mistakes in the fight. He overextended a couple times, or he went for certain things that weren't necessarily there. He was trying to force things and rush things. And it really reminded me of the Corey Sandhagen versus TJ Dillashaw fight, where Corey Sandhagen did a lot of the same things that Gane did. He made a lot of mistakes, unforced errors that cost him positioning, and positioning can cost you a whole round if you can't get out of the bad position you put yourself in. Jon Jones is one of the smartest, if not the smartest, and most composed fighter of all time. We've seen Jon Jones in a fight that he was down against Reyes, which, side note, by the way, he definitely lost that fight. I don't know how you could score rounds 1, 2, or 3 for Jon Jones, but hey, that's besides the point. But he was down in that fight, and he stayed completely composed and just walked Reyes down in rounds 4 and 5. Even in the first Gustafsson fight, when he was down on the scorecards, he stayed nothing but composed in that fight and was able to work his way back in that fight as well. So when you're talking about one of the most composed, one of the smartest fighters of all time, if Francis Ngannou can start to time them front kicks, Jon Jones can start to time them front kicks. And Francis Ngannou is not half the grappler that Jon Jones is. So I really hope that Ciryl Gane cleaned up some of them mistakes and learns how to be a little bit more careful in the octagon when he's up in a big fight. I know his coaches have talked about him needing to let the aggression out more and not so much coast to decisions, but I really hope that doesn't affect his composure, because he already got cost a championship fight because of his composure in the past. So, yeah, I don't know about, that, but one thing I will say is that I don't think Jon Jones is going to have an easy time getting an outright takedown on Ciryl Gane. This seems to be an unpopular opinion because most people think he's just going to be able to take Gane down and have his way with him. I don't think so. He wasn't able to do that to Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes is no grappler either. And he's not as big or as strong as Gane. I think that Jon Jones timing those kicks or catching him overextending and taking him down is way more likely. An outright shot on Ciryl Gane just doesn't seem to me like it's, gonna happen. So I just think that Jon's going to struggle with the wrestling a little bit more than people are thinking. And I think that Ciryl Gane, barring any mistakes, can pull a monumental upset off here. He could be the second, including Reyes, not Hamill, person to beat Jon Jones in the octagon. And that would be beyond impressive. He would blow up overnight. He'd be the new heavyweight champion of the world with plenty of contenders on the way up. You got Pavlovich. You got Aspinall coming back from injury. You got Curtis Blades, who is long overdue for a world championship opportunity. You got so many guys coming up. Spivak, we just saw absolutely manhandle Derek Lewis. So, yeah, basically the winner of this fight is going to have a lot of things to look forward to. So who do I think is going to win? I think Ciryl Gane wins this fight by decision, if I had to guess a method. But if I'm just picking the winner, I'm going to go with Ciryl. Because I really do think in order for Jon Jones to win this fight, he has to rely on Ciryl Gane to make certain errors that I'm sure Gane is preparing for and that Gane will be ready not to make. And I think if we can keep this a kickboxing match at range for the most part, Ciryl Gane may even be able to land a couple big shots and put Jon away. But I'm not going to put my money on, one of the greatest fighters of all time who's never even really been cleanly knocked down to be knocked out. So I'm not going to pick that. But I wouldn't be surprised, I'll tell you that. I also wouldn't be surprised if Jon went in there and took him down and manhandled him like a lot of other people are saying. MMA is such an unpredictable sport that I may feel one way from watching tape, and the fight may go a completely different way. So, yeah, I'm picking Ciryl Gane to pull this off. It should be a really good fight, and yeah, so that's my pick for this UFC 285 main event. Please hit that subscribe button, guys. I'm gonna get better at this. This is the first video. I gotta stop with the but we're gonna get there together. You wanna be here from the start of it because we're taking this thing to another level. I'm covering every fight. I'm covering every discussion going on in the world of combat sports. I'm gonna be jumping into the influencer scene. I'm gonna be jumping into the UFC scene. Any big MMA fight. We might do some traditional boxing fights, the big fights that are coming up. Hopefully this year, you never know with boxing. But yeah, I can only get better in front of this camera, and the support from you guys would be great. Hit that sub button, and let's go, baby.